Kia ora, I'm Chelsea Daniels, and this is The Front Page, a daily podcast presented by the New Zealand Herald. It's been revealed that Kiwis lost a record $3 billion to scams this year. That's a 30% increase from $2.3 billion last year. Netsafe and the Global Anti-Scam Alliance State of Scams in New Zealand report shows that scammers are getting more sophisticated and victims are facing persistent barriers to reporting and recovering their losses. So, how should we protect ourselves and who should be held accountable? Today on The Front Page, Netsafe's Lyons is with us to break down the latest figures and discuss how New Zealand can better prepare itself for the evolving world of scams. First off, Sean, let's dive into the report. How many Kiwis have experienced a scam within the last 12 months?
Well, we're now talking about a fairly significant increase. From the figures that we've been able to gather, we're saying probably close to more than 80%. So 82% from our report are experiencing a scam at some point in the last year. So this is not about occasional access. And if you kind of extrapolate the figures, you're probably talking about a person experiencing, over 150 different scam attempts in a year. So this is something that we're seeing regularly. For a lot of people, it's probably becoming the norm. So this is not something you might go, and drop your sandwich when you see it. It's the kind of thing that now you're probably saying, okay, here's another one. And there's good things about that, but there's also some concerns around it when things become really normal, when we start to become maybe a little bit sort of more casual about things. We might become a little bit blasé if we try and use the French word. And that's a concern, I think, is when we start to feel that things are a bit normal. Maybe sometimes our guard goes down. We look for spotting one thing. When the scams change a little bit, then perhaps that's where some of us are being caught out. So it's definitely much more normal, as I say, but it doesn't mean that we're all defended against it, unfortunately.
And we talk about experiencing scams. It's not actually people who have fallen victim to them, but you've just encountered it on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So for some people, that might be that they're sick and tired of getting the 75th text in the last 2 months to say that they owe a toll, or that they've been through a tunnel or something, or that there's a parcel waiting for them at a post office that doesn't sound quite right. So people will see and spot those. That's what we really mean. But in amongst those, there'll be some people that experience a much more realistic or much more plausible message, social media, email, whatever it is, and they'll actually follow through. So somewhere in those numbers are unfortunately people who are also falling victims to scams as well.
And because is that generally the way to go? They cast a wide net, as wide as possible, and just hope someone bites? Because I myself got one of those messages saying, "Hi mum, I've lost my phone," or something. It's like, now I'm not a mother, nor will I probably ever be one. So, but there will be some mothers that have actually got someone of that age, perhaps living out of home or living in a different country.
Absolutely. So there is definitely the kind of the scattergun approach, I suppose, is one way to put it. You buy from somewhere, somebody buys from somewhere a list of email addresses. It might be narrowed down to a country, it may not be, and they just fire out an email message or a text message or whatever mechanism they've got for contacting people. So there are definitely those. But there are also scams that can feel and maybe are a little more targeted. And now that's not to say that there's somebody out there that's picked on you. There's not someone that said, right, today I'm going to scam Sean. But what might be occurring, we think, in some of those situations is where there's data out there that might have been, leaked when somebody broke into a computer system with a whole lot of other sort of generally available information. People can piece these things together and then direct a scam that might feel an awful lot more targeted. I think that the best way might be the difference between getting a message from a bank, one that you might have heard of but don't use, and then getting a message that comes from a bank that you do use. Now, that could either be just luck of the draw, scattergun, or it might be that particular scam is targeting customers of a particular organization. And it's those times that in both those situations, they can feel a lot more personal. And when they feel personal, they can often feel a lot more real, and that's maybe the first step that scammers will go through to try and get us, hooked in. If they can find something that really talks to us, to use that phrase, then they're probably over their first hurdle. But they're not all the way through the gate, but they're certainly over the first hurdle.
Right, so I've got another example here. I got a message from my brother saying, "Is this you or is our dad getting scammed?" The message read, "Hi, Dad. Messaging you from my tablet eSIM travel plan. My old number's no longer working since I changed networks. Please reply so I can send you my new number." My dad then replies, "Okie dokie, love you, XXX." Now, because he has replied that, has he ended up on some master list somewhere where they've got a live one?
I think that's probably enough to get him categorized in a different way, maybe on an existing list. I don't think that singled him out for any kind of special treatment. But what they're doing there is that they probably have just got a whole list of contact details. They're looking for people that are prepared to respond. Now, the fact that he has responded and said, "Okie dokie, love you," and it was a from dad, maybe someone's going to assume, okay, here's a contact number that is a dad. And because they're a dad, maybe they'd be more susceptible to a sort of parent-based scam. So yeah, that's a common technique used. It is much more of that scattergun, but again, it's the steps that they take to take what might be millions of contact details and try and whittle it down to a smaller number, a more manageable number for them that they can start to have a more focused attack on.
In terms of some common scams, what are some? You've mentioned the tolls, the getting a message from your bank. We've messaged my dad falling for whatever that was. In terms of common ones that are going around at the moment, I mean, I don't really hear too much of the Nigerian prince anymore. Is he doing all right?
I think he may have reinvented himself into a retail job, perhaps, because we're certainly seeing a lot more of the retail-based scams. Look, the mechanism of the Nigerian prince, what they used to call a 419 scam, because it fitted a Nigerian penal code that was covered under this. It's those kinds of investment scams are definitely still around. They don't look like they did. They certainly don't come in on fax rolls, which is the scams that I remember back in the very early days. But the mechanisms are the same. We're definitely seeing retail scams as the biggest single category. Now, some of those might originate in offers that come in by email. Some of those might be because people are out browsing for certain products and coming across different sites. Investment scams, so people offering you get rich quick schemes, prizes, lotteries, grants, those kinds of things. The grant for being a wonderful citizen, unfortunately, is one that's been around for a long time and is still going around, because who doesn't want to think that their government's identified them as just a superb person and is going to get a whole lot of money as a result. But there are some scams that are constant, that those would indicate what ones that are, but also what we do see continually is the change in what is that very basic scam to have elements of that, but to look very differently. So probably the greatest example for us over the last few years is the kind of merging of a romance scam, a traditional I meet you on a site online, form a relationship with you. Originally, romance scams would all then be about I need some money because my mother's ill or I've been arrested, the things that were very, very familiar. Now those scams are often, rather than pivoting into just give me some money, often they're pivoting into I've got a great investment opportunity for you, and I've been investing in this cryptocurrency or these shares for a while. We should invest together, like a romantic investment. And so they're using one scam, they're piggybacking a second one off of it. They are changing their tactics depending on what's working. Now that might be working on the individual or from what they know is working generally. So the mechanisms of scams are very similar, but the ways in which scammers use them, the scale in which they're using them, and I guess the tenacity to to a great extent that scammers are prepared to apply to these things are what's changing, and are indications, unfortunately, of the success that they're experiencing, just how profitable these things are for scammers.
This guy, Jack Hennessy, came to New Zealand, boarded a plane in May last year. as part of a crime syndicate. And what they were doing was cold calling Auckland victims, mostly elderly, and pretending that they were part of a covert police operation, trying to catch bad crooked bank staff and counterfeit notes. What they'd do is they would send this guy, Jack Hennessy, over by taxi to the elderly people's homes and ask them to have withdrawn large sums of money, up to $20,000, and they'd hand it over when he used a special code word.
And they managed to get more than $300,000.
Yeah, within the space of a day after arriving, within the space of 14 days, Mr. Hennessy had visited 21 residences, and he managed to get $337,000, and none of that money was ever recovered.
And you mentioned retail scams. What does that entail? That you pay for something and you never get it, basically?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest one. But there are some that you pay for something and what arrives is not what you thought. We've certainly heard of people purchasing goods and then photographs of the goods arriving, and so people then saying, well, we didn't scam you, you didn't check the fine print. Or where people will order one product and then a totally worthless and ridiculous other product arrives, and they rather than saying it's a scam, they try to bury themselves in it being a logistics error or an ordering error or a system error. But the majority of them would be, I'm looking for some sneakers. I try and find some. They're at one price on one site that I know really well, and then I come across somewhere that's selling them a little bit less, or a different color that I couldn't get anywhere else. And I think I'm going to take a risk on that. And then those products just simply never, ever arrive. And when I go back and try and take some action, the likelihood is that the website or the contact that I was dealing with has disappeared into the ether. So that would be the kind of main mechanism of retail scam. And unfortunately, that's hitting quite a considerable number of New Zealanders this year, as it has in previous years.
How does New Zealand's scam exposure compare internationally? So are we keeping up the pace with global trends or kind of falling behind in prevention efforts?
I think we are comparable to lots of the countries that we talk to. And scamming is not. Although the impacts are very local, it's absolutely a global enterprise. It's a global business. I think many of the people that carry out the scams would have almost no idea originally where their targets were. That might come over in the conversations that we have, but I don't think we are particularly more vulnerable than any of the other countries. Certainly, that Netsafe would talk to. Most countries are facing similar problems, similar losses, but by population, similar mechanisms. There's lots of really great prevention work that goes on. There's lots of really great awareness raising that goes on, and I think, when you stop people in the streets and if you ask them about the different scams that are out there or their experience, they would probably be able to tell you, with some detail about the scams that they had recognized. And I think that's a really good sign. But we still see losses. We know that scammers are becoming increasingly more sophisticated, more determined, as I mentioned before, and that means that the things that we recognised as a scam yesterday, you mentioned our friend the Prince a while ago. That anybody that tried to send out a message that looked like one of those scams, I think most people would recognise that that's just not real. But with a slightly different dressing, with a slightly different story, with a slightly different mechanism, throw a few websites in, throw a few convincing videos in, a few fake news stories from media outlets that look real but actually aren't. And a lot of people could probably and actually do still lose money to what is basically the same scam, but just looking an awful lot different to how it might have done. So I think as a nation, we do a good job both in prevention and awareness. But unfortunately, there's a lot more to it than just prevention and awareness.
So Netsafe and the Global Anti-Scam Alliance recommend an international network of anti-scam centres. How realistic do you reckon that is for New Zealand to be a part of?
I think it is fairly realistic that there are lots of organisations here that work in this space. There are lots of organisations whose customers are the targets of scams, and like I said before, most nations, all nations, I imagine, have this same issue. But it is absolutely a transnational crime. This is not. There are obviously frauds and scams that go on inside New Zealand, perpetrated against New Zealanders by New Zealanders, but the majority of the scams that we're talking about are across multiple countries, where there are different staging steps across multiple countries. It breaches laws in different countries, but the laws are very different, and so it makes the response much harder. International cooperation is a huge part of this, and is, as we say, I think absolutely necessary if we're going to start making significant inroads. Because when the victim's here in New Zealand, but yet the perpetrators are in Belgium, I have no idea why I picked on Belgium, but they just came to my mind. What that really needs is a coordinated effort between agencies and organisations in New Zealand and agencies and organisations in Belgium to try and get a handle on both ends of that problem. And it's that coordination that I think can reduce the time between when the scams happen and when we start to get a kind of foothold, a grasp on who's doing it, and then try to close down those operations. Because these things are not about individuals anymore. This is not somebody in a darkened room with a hoodie on perpetrating a scam. These are, complex commercial, albeit criminal organizations, organized crime groups. These are who are perpetrating these scams at the scale that we're seeing it, and that requires coordination and cooperation right across the globe.
I have curated a list of the top 100 scammiest ads I have been served over the past 6 months, and I bought them all. But I did it to answer the age-old question: what if it's not a scam and it changes my life forever? This is what everyone says right before they get scammed. We've got a watch. You guys are about to see the most epic ad you've ever seen.
My favorite Carbinox watch is the new X Ranger. Let's take a look and see how tough it is. It is able to withstand up to 10,000 pounds of weight.
He's making his words longer on purpose to sound cooler. It's working. I kind of love this guy. I kind of really like that ad. Let's test it. If I can break this thing, I'm not sure I can look that guy in the eyes anymore. Or the Oakleys. Goodness. It didn't look like this in the ad. This was $80. Form factor, fire. Never felt this masculine before, honestly. All right, let's try to break it. Zero stars, bro. Come on.
Are there any groups of people in particular who are susceptible to these kind of, or any kind of scam, really? I mean, we've got my dad here who immediately told a scammer that he loves them. He is of the older generation. But does it affect everyone, or are the older people, I suppose, more susceptible?
Yeah,
Putting it nicely for my dad.
It's a really good question. And I think that there's a perception. I think a lot of people have a perception that the older people are more susceptible to scams. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think susceptibility comes in the time and the place. It comes from the type of scam that's being put before people. I think often if there is a type, and if I was pushed on that with my arm twisted up my back, I'd say it wasn't about age or demographic or socioeconomic status of any description. It's probably about capability and confidence. It's about people's familiarity with a particular technology. It's about their confidence to push back when somebody's putting them under pressure. It's about their ability to stop, think, and breathe in those situations and say, hang on, I've got a bad feeling about this. Something instinctually is wrong. And therefore I'm going to say no, even if the person on the other end of the scam is saying that they're from the police or from the government, or they're threatening them in some way, Or they, in the case of those Hello Mum scams that you mentioned before, where, as those things progress, sometimes what people are hearing is that their loved one is in danger or in harm, or even in some extreme cases, hearing messages directly from their loved ones that they're physically being harmed at the time. Do we have the capabilities to stop and say, is this likely? Is this realistic? Can I get somebody else's opinion? They're the people who are less likely to be scammed. But there are scams that target people that clearly are not older, but there are scams that target people who are. If the right story at the right time, when you're in the right state of mind, comes across your mailbox or your phone screen, whatever it might be, any one of us is susceptible to that scam. And I think it's really important that we all remember that none of us are scam proof. There could be a scam out there that makes you think, oh, this is real, or, oh, I must act. You may not have seen it yet, and great if you haven't, but thinking that any of us are immune because of how old we are, where we live, or what platforms we're on is probably risky thinking.
And I suppose that we should all be on our guard given Black Friday sales are coming up. It must just be scam Christmas time.
It's nearly as big as Christmas time. You're right. It is scam Christmas time. And scam operations know that this is one of those times of the year when people are probably more active in online retail, and they definitely take advantage of that. And for the reason that people maybe are more likely to be buying things, but also because it's a time that we're all probably that little bit more bombarded with messaging from legitimate organizations that creates a kind of fog, if you like, of those sort of offers, and makes it a little harder, I think, for all of us to discern and differentiate the what's real from what's not. And scammers will absolutely jump on that moment, those times where they think maybe that might be enough just to push somebody who was cautious on Thursday are going to be a little bit less cautious on Black Friday because they're so chasing hard for that stainless steel frying pan. And if someone suddenly puts that offer in front of me, then maybe I'm going to take the risk. So it is definitely a busy time for the scammers. Christmas will be too. The unfortunate thing, that means it's also going to be a really disappointing time for a number of New Zealanders when those things just don't turn up.
Well, I know what you want for Christmas now, Sean. Thanks for joining us.
No problem at all.
That's it for this episode of The Front Page. You can read more about today's stories and extensive news coverage at nzherald.co.nz. The Front Page is produced by Jane Yee and Richard Martin, who is also our editor. I'm Chelsea Daniels. Subscribe to The Front Page on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts, and tune in tomorrow for another look behind the headlines.